Hey everybody, final thoughts time for Copan Dying City. But before I get to that, please remember this was a paid Kickstarter preview. And with that out of the way, oh my goodness. Holy Grail Games knocks it out of the park again with the help of design super duo Eric Dubus and Olivier Melisson. Sorry guys, I do not know how to pronounce French. I took German in high school. But Eric and Olivier, wow, what a track record. I mean, they are unstoppable. Came out of the gate with Museum, which was a fantastic set collection, kind of a Gateway Plus game. Then knocked it out of the park with Dominations. Really amazing, big, brilliant, and puzzly Euro 4X civilization building game. And then Museum Pictura. And pretty soon we're going to be getting, what's the other one? Encyclopedia. And now Copan, the Dying City. Hit after hit after hit. These guys know how to make a fun, crunchy, interesting, and very different, a very unique Euro that just tickles Jensen my fancy every single time they come out of the gate with really, whether they're doing a little lighter game or a big complex one like this. Actually, that's not quite right. I mean, they're all been fairly rich and robust games with a lot of things going on. And then, Holy Grail comes along with amazing production. Really, really just wonderful stuff. So what is it about this game that is so cool? Well, it is a worker placement game, and I love worker placement games that feature bumping. I don't know if Jamie Stegmaier was the first designer ever to do it all the way a billion years ago with, what was that? Now that's going to drive me nuts. Euphoria. I've been in love with it ever since, and it doesn't really come up that often. What's interesting is it's a new twist to it here, because in other bumping games, there's only so many worker placement spots. If somebody's in a space where I go, I end up having to bump them out, and that gives them a little benefit or something like that, and they take their worker back, and then they can place it. Not so here. If somebody bumps somebody else, they stay where they are. They still stay in the same spot. Unless you've got like 3 people who all go to the same spot, then a person can get bumped out. But even then, when you get bumped out, you immediately get to go someplace else. It is a good thing to get bumped. You want to get bumped because it lets you skip right to the really big paydays. You don't have to spend so much time there, and you can move on to the next thing. Or if you move on to the next thing, you can move into the next area for free without having to spend resources. So the bumping, the worker bumping, is done in a really fresh and interesting way here. And then that's just the beginning, because this is also a tile laying game where players are taking turns, filling out these areas. And every time you put a tile down at the beginning of your turn, you harvest on that, plus everything that's nearby. Plus, depending on where you go, you potentially trigger events that can change the whole state of the world. And that's really the main timer of the game, because once all these spaces are filled up, then Copan, the city, has actually died, and it's time to see who history will remember best based on all the stuff you've put into the game. Another interesting thing, too, there's a really interesting tension on almost everything you do in this game. As you get more of your Jade Mask made, as you have more followers, the city starts to hate you for it, because, you're just taking. And it's not until you give back to the city, even in its decline, that you avoid losing points. Because you will lose points if you do not work your way up in the goodwill of the city by climbing up this central pyramid on these 4 different axes. Those characters who helped you, they'll lose you points at the end of the game. That extra storage, lose you points. The Jade Mask, the visits to the altars, lose points, unless you spend time, again, earning the goodwill of the city, so you can actually go to, at least I was losing 2, now I'm only losing 1. Yeah, I'm not losing points. Hey, I've done it enough. I'm actually gaining points. And so that's something you always want to be chasing as well. But that's only to supplement what you're doing. And really, there are 4 different categories that can all lead to huge benefits, whether it's focusing on the set collection to make the Jade Mask, or the characters to unlock all their special powers and in-game scoring bonuses, or the making more embassies. Because, and an interesting thing, I didn't actually get a chance to show this. You have an interesting interesting choice. Every time you go to an embassy, it's the most expensive thing you can do just about, but every time you go to an embassy, you either want to go to a new one because you get huge points for more unique cities you build, but if instead you go to the same and build a second embassy in a city you've already been to, you start getting bigger and bigger paydays from this really cool little treasure chest. You can get 2, 3, 4 things out of here, but then you're not scoring the big points for going for, breadth. Instead, if you go for depth, you can get big benefits that will pay out in really big ways too. It's a lot. There's so much going on here, folks, but at its heart, it's a really simple idea. Every turn, 2 halves. Gather some resources, potentially causing you to have to roll in this wonderful little dice tray, by the way. They didn't have to go the extra mile, but it is really nice. And you're only ever rolling on die. It's just that whenever this happens, it's such a big deal. It affects everybody. And it could affect everybody really weakly if you chose a game that's not going to be very harsh and punishing, or it could really hurt everybody really hard. If it's a harsh, punishing game, I really love that variability that you can specify, well, do I want a long game? Do I want a short game? Do I want an easygoing, relaxed game? Or do I want, oh my gosh, everything's blowing up around us? I love that variety. And then, whichever one you choose, it makes the events happen, which are triggered by us. They are our fault, but they are inevitable because this is a dying city. And I should talk about that a little bit too. It's interesting. When Holy Grail originally contacted me, they said, "Did I want to cover it?" I was a little hesitant because at the time they said, "Well, hey, you know what? Eric and Olivier are actually history professors, and they've done a lot of research." But I was really kind of, well, yeah, but did you actually work with anybody from the native communities, to kind of get their feedback and, and basically kind of give back to them? I mean, this game has a central element in it. Hey, you got to give back to this city if you want to succeed. How about we give back to the people, when we're actually using their culture and history to make a fun thing? And so I was a little hesitant, but then recently Holy Grail said, you know what? We decided to do it, and they've actually sought out, cultural consultants to really give a lot of feedback, and that just makes, every time that happens, it always makes the games better. It makes the games better because they have a stronger verisimilitude towards history, little things about the culture that no amount of studying could ever get you come through when you actually work with people who this is their lived experience, this is their family history, this is their lineage. So the fact that Holy Grail went the extra mile, following in the footsteps of, Board and Dice, I doffed my cap to them. As soon as they said, "Oh yeah, we decided to do it," I was like, "Yeah, I really wanted to try this." I was so excited because I loved all their previous games, and the labor of love this game comes through, and it's really great. Now, all that said, I have one complaint, and I briefly mentioned it in the run-through. Actually, I have 2 complaints. I have a tiny complaint. This is the main thing that gives you some kind of... This is a very sandboxy game. And at the beginning of the game, you can do anything. Because it's a time of plenty. It's a golden age. It makes sense that, the horizon, it's whatever you make of it. And it means it's very difficult when you first sit down, like, well, what am I going to do? What is my first turn going to be? Everything seems equally valuable. And you get a little bit, because in the future, but this isn't really going to hit you for a while. A lot of games give you something. I mean, if I could just start with one character in my coterie that gives me, it doesn't have to be like a super powerful one, just something that gives me, at the beginning, I think I'd like to work on the embassies or something like that. It's daunting to sit down and play this game almost completely directionless right from the get-go. It makes thematic sense because at the beginning of the game, it's wide open. You can do whatever you want. It's a golden age. And as the game goes and, things constrict and get tighter and tougher and more things get taken offline, you're, okay, I can't get any more characters if I don't get over there quick. Then you start getting direction. And that's cool. I love that, but I would just love just a tiny bit of direction. I don't need it. Certainly, hey, if you see a character you really like, that might make sense. But still, that's a minor thing. I'm not even going to complain about it too much. I like a little bit more direction. This game is very sandboxy. Maybe that's an issue for you. My wife and I were certainly able to overcome it because the gameplay is so great. My bigger issue is in a 2-player game, they did almost no player scaling at all. Yes, they tightened up the board to make the game end quicker, which is great. But the coming in first, second, third, they didn't do anything to scale that. So if you worked really hard and got a lot of characters in the ball court, and then I come along and just do it just once for the entire game, even though you did it like 5 times, I get You get 6 points, I get 3 points. I get half the points for doing almost nothing. And it just becomes fait accompli. Well, of course I'll do it because, and so many games have handled that so well, where it's just you do a couple extra things. Hey, if you want to get second place, you have to be within so many points of whoever's in first place. So you have to kind of at least try to catch up with them. Or, something like that. That always bugs me when that extra time, there are so many games that have handled this so brilliantly in so many different ways, and they just kind of avoided it. I could still live with that, but what I said I love about this game the most, the new take on worker placement bumping, which is so great, it practically doesn't exist in a two-player game because the board is so huge and there's only one other player. Now, at a four-player game, there's only 5 worker placement spots. There will be bumping aplenty. It's impossible. You can't not bump into people. And that creates all kinds of really interesting things. Oh, I don't want to bump you because that's really going to help you. Am I going to bump you instead? Or no, I'll go to that one place, but I don't want to go there, but I'm not bumping anybody. Oh, but I bet you'll bump me once I go there. I love all of that. It's practically non-existent because we've got such a huge board. Oh, you're over there. Well, you're eventually going to leave. I'll just go do something else while I'm waiting for you to leave. And as the game tightens, it can happen a little bit, but just not that much. And even if something as simple as, hey, you know what? Because the bumping has to be on the exact spot. Hey, if I were here and then you came here, there was a bump. How about if I were here and you just visited the same zone I was in? Even if you didn't go to the exact same spot, just visiting the same zone as me causes a bump. That would double the amount of bumping that happens in a two-player game. It would be such a simple little change. Or even more, hey, I was planning on getting one more use out of here. Yay, I was gonna, no, actually that's not true. I knew I was gonna get kicked out. You don't want to bump me because if you do, you let me get bumped for free. It would be a lot more interesting because as it is, if I'm about to get kicked out, you don't mind coming here because it doesn't benefit me at all. But you would be a little bit more nervous. There'd be more player interaction. The coolest new element, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of cool elements in this game. The presentation is great. The thematic consistency is great. It's a really strongly thematic game. And again, that fundamental idea of, the horn of plenty is a-blowing, but as the game goes on, it just constricts and gets tighter and tougher, and the game gets meaner to you. I love that. I just wish the really cool bumping would happen a little bit. It seems like it'd be pretty easy to do. Now, as a counterpoint, here is something to consider. Some people might like that there's less bumping at a lower player count because it means you are not going to be interrupted as much if you're making long-term plans to stay at a given zone 1, 2, 3 turns in a row. That is the other really cool thing about this game that I forgot to mention. When you visit a location, you're not just planning on doing that and then moving on. Generally, you're planning on staying there for a while to wring the most out of it, which means you've got some really interesting puzzling to figure out, well, how can I get the best visit out of a ball court 3 turns in a row? And then you've also got the tough spot where, well, I'd like to stay here, but I've got to move on because some other things showed up. And am I going to stay or am I going to go? Players bumping you, of course, are going to interrupt with all that strategic planning. And so again, if you're the type of player who just likes, leave me alone, maybe you're going to be happy with it as is. Maybe you'll enjoy the game even more at a lower player count because of it. Me, I like the bumping, but I could certainly see why for some folks it's cooler to say, oh, I'm just going to be over here, thanks. You do you. Okay, let's get back to it. And so I'm kind of hoping that, these would be very easy house rules to implement. Super duper easy house rules. Holy Grail and Eric and Olivier, they have made a wonderful game, and I can certainly confirm it works great as it is, as two, with just a little bit of tweaking. This could be their best work yet, quite frankly. And that's saying something because they have produced some wonderful, wonderful stuff. And not the least of which is Copan, the Dying City. And that was the run through, folks. Thank you very much for watching. Have a nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.